Evan's heart pounded louder than the bass thumping through the rooftop club, a kaleidoscope of neon lights and writhing bodies. He wasn't supposed to be here, not after swearing off New York's chaotic nightlife. But his best friend Mia had dragged him out, promising a night to forget the world. Now, as a stranger's gaze locked onto his from across the crowded dance floor, Evan felt the world tilt, and he wasn't sure he'd ever find solid ground again. The man was magnetic, tall, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that burned with quiet intensity. Evan, at 25, was no stranger to attention. His sharp cheekbones and emerald-green eyes often turned heads. But this man, probably a few years older, moved through the crowd like he owned it, his navy blazer hugging his frame with effortless confidence. Evan's breath hitched as the stranger closed the distance, a smirk playing on his lips. Lost in the chaos, or just looking for trouble, the man asked, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down Evan's spine. Up close, he was even more striking, rugged yet polished, with a neatly trimmed beard and warm brown eyes that seemed to see straight through him. Evan laughed, trying to play it cool, but his voice betrayed a nervous edge. Maybe a bit of both. You, the man's smirk widened. Julian, he said, offering a hand. And I think I just found what I'm looking for. The words were bold, almost possessive, and Evan felt a spark ignite in his chest, a dangerous, exhilarating pull. They talked, their banter sharp and electric, as the club pulsed around them. Julian was a corporate lawyer, 28, with a dry wit and a knack for making Evan feel like the only person in the room. One drink turned into two, then three, and before Evan knew it, they were dancing, bodies pressed close, the world fading to a blur of heat and rhythm. It was then, in a haze of tequila and strobe lights, that happened. Julian's hand grazed Evan's neck, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through him, not just attraction, but something deeper, primal. Evan gasped, his vision swimming, as an unfamiliar warmth spread through his veins. Julian froze, his eyes widening with something like panic. "Oh, shit," he muttered, stepping back. "I didn't mean to. What was that?" Evan demanded, his voice shaking. His skin tingled where Julian had touched him, a strange ache settling in his chest. Julian ran a hand through his dark hair, looking torn between guilt and awe. "I think I just bonded you," he said, barely audible over the music. "It's not supposed to happen like this." Evan's stomach dropped. Bonding, an alpha's instinctive claim, a rare connection rooted in pheromones and primal energy, something he'd only heard about in hushed whispers among his queer friends. It was supposed to be deliberate, sacred, not a drunken accident in a club. "You're an alpha?" Evan asked, his voice rising. Julian nodded, his expression grim. "Yeah. And you're reacting like an omega. This shouldn't have happened. I'm so sorry." The weight of his words crashed over Evan. He wasn't an omega. He'd never shown signs, never felt that pull. Yet now, his body hummed with a need he couldn't explain, a magnetic draw to Julian that felt like it was rewriting his very soul. "Fix it," Evan said, his voice trembling. "Undo it. Now." Julian's jaw tightened. "I can't. It's permanent unless he trailed off, his eyes darkening. "Unless we complete it. Where you'll feel me. Always. No matter where you go. Evan's heart raced, fear and fury warring with the undeniable heat pooling in his core. He didn't ask for this, didn't want to be tethered to a stranger. But as Julian stepped closer, his scent, sandalwood and spice, wrapped around Evan like a lifeline, and he hated how much he craved it. "I need air," Evan muttered, pushing through the crowd toward the rooftop's edge. The city sprawled below, a glittering maze of lights, but it offered no escape. Julian followed, his presence a quiet storm at Evan's back. "I'll help you through this," Julian said softly, his voice laced with guilt. "I won't let you face it alone." Evan wanted to scream, to shove him away, but the bond pulsed between them, a living thing that refused to be ignored. He was trapped, bound to an alpha he barely knew, and the night was only beginning. The next morning, Evan woke with a headache and a heart that wouldn't stop racing. He lay in his Brooklyn apartment, the memory of Julian's touch seared into his skin. The bond was real. He felt it in every breath, a constant tug toward a man he'd met only hours ago. He grabbed his phone, half hoping it was a dream, but there was Julian's number, saved with a simple J and a message: "Call me when you're ready to talk." "I owe you that much." Evan tossed the phone aside, his mind spinning. He wasn't ready to talk, not to Julian, not to anyone. He'd spent years carving out a life as an independent graphic designer, free from the expectations of his conservative family in Ohio. He'd come out as gay at 18, fought for his place in the world. And now this? A biological tether to an alpha. Like some cosmic joke? He wasn't an omega. Damn it. Or at least, he hadn't been until last night. He tried to work, sketching logos for a client, but his focus shattered every time Julian's face flashed in his mind, those intense brown eyes, that infuriatingly perfect smirk. By noon, the ache in his chest was unbearable, like a string pulling him toward Manhattan. "Screw this," Evan muttered, grabbing his jacket. He needed answers, and Julian was the only one who had them. They met at a quiet coffee shop in the West Village, the kind with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Julian was already there, looking unfairly good in a gray sweater that hugged his broad chest. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle but guarded. Evan slid into the seat across from him, glaring. "Do I look okay? I feel like I'm losing my mind." Julian leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I know this is a lot. I've never bonded anyone before. Hell, I didn't think I could accidentally. But I'm not going to abandon you. Evan, we'll figure this out." His sincerity only made Evan angrier. "Figure it out? You turn my life upside down. I don't even know you." Julian's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "You're right. You don't. But I feel you, Evan, every second, like you're part of me. And I know you feel it too." Evan wanted to deny it, but the bond hummed between them, a current that made his skin prickle and his heart ache. He hated it. He hated how Julian's voice soothed him, how his presence felt like home. They talked for hours, piecing together what little they knew. Julian explained that bonding was rare, a quirk of biology that only surfaced in certain alpha-omega pairings. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, a connection that could drive people to madness if ignored. "The only way to break it is to complete the bond," Julian said, his voice low. "Or we learn to live with it." "Complete it how?" Evan asked, though he already suspected the answer. Julian's eyes darkened, a flicker of desire breaking through his restraint. It's intimate, a mutual choice, not something I'd ever push on you. Evan's cheeks burned, his body traitorously warm at the thought. He stood abruptly. I need time. Don't call me unless I call you first. But time didn't help. Over the next week, Evan's life unraveled. He couldn't sleep without dreaming of Julian, his laugh, his touch, his scent. At a gallery opening with Mia, Evan froze when he caught a whiff of sandalwood, his body reacting before his mind could catch up. Julian wasn't there, but the bond made Evan feel him anyway, a phantom presence that left him dizzy and desperate. He was losing himself, and the worst part, a small, traitorous part of him didn't want to fight it. By week 2, Evan was a wreck. The bond wasn't just a feeling, it was a physical need, like hunger or thirst. He'd snap at clients, zone out during meetings, and once, he nearly broke down in a grocery store when a stranger's cologne reminded him of Julian. Finally, he caved and called. I can't do this, he said, his voice raw. I need help. Julian was at his apartment in an hour, carrying a bag of takeout and a look of quiet determination. You don't have to go through this alone, he said, setting the food on Evan's cluttered kitchen counter. Up close, Julian was overwhelming. His presence filled the room, steady and warm. Like a fire, Evan couldn't help but lean into. I'm not here to control you, Julian added, his voice soft. But I can ease it if you let me. Evan didn't know what he expected. Maybe for Julian to be smug or overbearing, like the alpha stereotypes he'd heard about. But Julian was gentle. He cooked. He listened. He stayed. He brought Evan coffee in the morning, teased him about his messy sketches, and sat with him through late-night panic attacks when a bond felt like it was tearing him apart. Why are you doing this? Evan asked one night, curled up on his couch with Julian's arm around him. You don't owe me anything. Julian's eyes softened. Because I feel you, Evan. Not just the bond, but you. Your strength. Your fire. I don't want you to break. The words hit Evan like a punch. And for the first time, he let himself lean into Julian's warmth, his head resting against his chest. It felt right, terrifyingly, impossibly right. But the bond wasn't all tender moments. It was also arguments, raw and heated, as Evan pushed back against the pole. You're going to play daddy and fix me, he shouted one night, when Julian tried to coax him into eating after a sleepless week. Julian didn't flinch. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to keep you from falling apart. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of hurt, and Evan hated how much it stung. The turning point came at a friend's party in Soho. Evan, desperate for normalcy, tried to flirt with a cute artist named Leo, but the bond roared to life. A jealous, aching pull that left him gasping. Julian, who'd shown up uninvited, was at his side in seconds, his hand on Evan's back. You okay? He asked, his voice low but urgent. Evan wanted to hate him, but all he could do was nod, letting Julian guide him outside. In the quiet of the street, Julian cupped Evan's face, his touch grounding. I'm here, he said. Always. Evan's walls cracked. He didn't want to need Julian, but he did. And as Julian's thumb brushed his cheek, Evan realized he didn't just need him, he wanted him. The bond was a double-edged sword, binding Evan to Julian while tearing at his sense of self. He'd always prided himself on his independence, on building a life where no one could control him. But now, every choice felt colored by the bond, by Julian's scent, his voice, the way his presence calmed the storm in Evan's chest. It was maddening, intoxicating, and Evan was drowning in it. They spent more time together, not because Evan wanted to, but because he had to. Julian was a constant now, bringing him lunch at his studio, texting him dumb memes to make him laugh, even showing up to drag him to yoga when Evan hadn't left his apartment in days. "You're not my babysitter," Evan grumbled once. But Julian just grinned. "Maybe not, but I'm your alpha." Comes with the territory. The word alpha still made Evan bristle, but he couldn't deny the shift between them. Julian wasn't just an obligation. He was a partner, someone who saw Evan's sharp edges and didn't flinch. They talked about everything: Julian's high-pressure job, Evan's dreams of opening his own design firm, their shared love of old jazz records. One night, sprawled on Julian's couch in his sleek Manhattan loft, Evan caught himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. Julian's eyes lit up, and Evan's heart stuttered. This wasn't just a bond, it was real. But the bond wasn't done with them. At a charity gala, Julian invited him to. Evan felt the pull intensify, a raw, primal need that left him shaky and clinging to Julian's arm. "It's getting stronger," Julian murmured, his voice tight as they slipped into a quiet hallway. "The longer we fight it, the worse it'll get." Evan's throat tightened. "And if we don't fight it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Julian's gaze softened, but there was heat beneath it. "Then we choose each other. Fully. No turning back." The words hung between them, heavy with promise and risk. Evan wanted to say yes, to give in to the fire between them, but fear held him back. What if this was just a bond talking? What if he lost himself completely? The question haunted him as they navigated the gala, Julian's hand a steady anchor on his lower back. Evan caught whispers from others, curious glances, murmurs about the alpha and his omega. It made his skin crawl. But Julian never wavered, introducing Evan with pride, deflecting questions with easy charm. Later, as they danced under a chandelier, Julian's lips brushed Evan's ear. "You're not just mine," he whispered. "I'm yours, too." Evan's heart ached, torn between fear and a longing so deep it scared him. That night, back at Julian's loft, Evan made a choice. He kissed Julian, hard and desperate, pouring all his confusion and want into it. Julian kissed him back, fierce and tender, and for a moment, the bond felt like a gift, not a cage. But as they pulled apart, breathless, Evan's doubts crept back. "What if this isn't real?" he whispered. Julian's hand found his, steady as ever. "It's real if we make it real." The bond was a living thing, growing stronger with every touch, every shared glance. Evan tried to keep his distance, to reclaim his life, but it was like fighting gravity. He'd see Julian's name on his phone, and his heart would leap. He'd catch a scent on a borrowed hoodie, and his body would ache. It wasn't just desire, it was need, bone deep and relentless. And it was driving him to the edge. Things came to a head during a weekend trip to the Catskills. Julian had suggested it, a chance to get away from the noise and figure out what they wanted. Evan agreed, desperate for clarity, but the cabin cozy, remote, with a view of rolling hills, only amplified the bond's pull. They hiked, cooked, laughed, but the tension simmered beneath every moment. That night, by the fireplace, Julian's hand brushed Evan's, and the bond roared to life, a tidal wave of want that left Evan gasping. "I can't keep doing this," Evan said, his voice breaking. "It's too much." Julian's face fell, but he nodded. "If you want me to go, I'll go. I'll figure out a way to break this, even if it kills me." The thought of losing Julian, of losing the warmth, the safety, hit Evan like a freight train. He didn't want to break the bond. He wanted Julian, bond or no bond. They kissed again, slower this time, a promise in every touch. But as things heated up, Evan pulled back, his chest heaving. "I need to know it's me choosing this, not the bond," he said. Julian's eyes were soft, vulnerable. "Then we wait. Until you're sure." The next day, disaster struck. Evan's phone buzzed with a call from his sister, Claire, back in Ohio. Their father had suffered a stroke, and Evan needed to come home. The news shattered him, and Julian was there, packing his bag, booking his flight, holding him as he cried. "I'm coming with you," Julian said, and Evan didn't argue. He needed Julian, not just because of the bond, but because he couldn't imagine facing this alone. Ohio was a minefield. Evan's family didn't know about the bond, or even that he was seeing someone. Coming out had fractured their relationship years ago, and now, with his father in the hospital, the tension was palpable. Julian stayed by his side, a quiet strength, but Evan felt the weight of their stares, his mother's disapproval, his sister's curiosity. "Who's this?" Claire asked, eyeing Julian. Evan hesitated, then took Julian's hand. "He's with me," he said, his voice steady. It was the first time he'd claimed Julian, and it felt like a victory. But the hospital brought new challenges. The bond flared in close quarters, making it hard for Evan to focus. Julian noticed, slipping him water, rubbing his shoulders, whispering reassurances. "You're stronger than this," Julian said one night, as they sat in the hospital parking lot. "You're stronger than me, than the bond, than all of it." Evan looked at him, really looked, and saw not just an alpha, but a man who'd chosen him, over and over. Back in New York, Evan's father stabilized, but the trip had changed something in him. He'd faced his family, his past, with Julian at his side, and it made him realize what he wanted. The bond was part of it, yes, but it wasn't everything. Julian was. They talked, really talked, for the first time since the club. Evan admitted his fears of losing himself, of being defined by the bond. Julian listened, then shared his own, that he'd fallen for Evan, not just because of the bond, but because of who Evan was: fierce, creative, unyielding. "I don't want to own you," Julian said, his voice raw. "I want to build something with you. If you'll let me." Evan made his choice. They completed the bond that night, not out of obligation, but out of love, a mutual, deliberate act that felt like coming home. The bond settled, no longer a wild force, but a steady hum, a connection that strengthened them both. They weren't perfect. Evan still snapped when Julian got too protective, and Julian still struggled with his alpha instincts, but they were real. Months later, at a quiet rooftop bar, not unlike the one where they'd met, Evan leaned against Julian, watching the city lights. You ever think about that night? Evan asked, his voice soft. Julian smiled, brushing a kiss against his temple. Every day. Best accident of my life. The bond had brought them together. But it was their choices, their fights, their laughter, their love that made them stay. Evan wasn't Julian's baby, or his omega, or anything he hadn't chosen to be. He was Evan, and Julian was his. And together, they were unstoppable. The world wasn't always kind to men like them, but they'd built something stronger than prejudice, stronger than biology. They'd built a home, and that was enough.